Well, welcome. I'm excited to have another episode of Page Turners today with an incredible guest, best-selling author, former U.S. Air Force fighter pilot for 23 years. I know it like we talked about, you did F-15, F-16, and FA-18, and that is kind of blows my mind because when I think about I'll get on a tangent later, but I was like, I have a hard time flying in regular planes, commercial jets. So I'm like, I don't even want to imagine the G-force there. But Kyle Skalisky, your best-selling book, A Sky Less Traveled. I'm excited to talk to you today and talk about your history, your experience, and also, the book itself and what you're doing now, what you want to do in the future. And so thank you for being here.
Well, Corey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity today. I have really enjoyed the process of writing and then getting a book published. Never thought that was something that was within my bandwidth, but it has been a really rewarding experience. And, I'm happy to be here today to talk about it.
That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, I want to talk about your book, and I first want to dive into your experience. 23 years with the U.S. Air Force. So like, what was that? What was that like? Because I know we all have this image in our head of, the movies, or we see some kind of thing, but how much of that is real versus, your actual experience? What was that like?
Right. Well, I mean, we'll get to the book, but as I write in the book, I didn't grow up around the military at all. Was nowhere near any bases. Nobody in my family was in the military. But the Air Force Academy sought me out to go play sports, and it seemed like the best offer that a guy like me could get, because I was from a family that didn't really have the means to pay for me to go to college, and I had to find my own means to do that as one of 6 kids, and not a lot of revenue in coming into the family. So I ended up at the Air Force Academy. And when I was there, they have wonderful summer programs that introduce you to flight instruction, parachute programs, things like that then, opened my eyes to a different world than anything that I had imagined. And I found out, at a young age that, hey, I could fly airplanes. I fly them pretty well and I enjoy it. And so, that charted my path. Upon graduation, went to pilot training and ended up in F-15 fighters operationally during the Cold War.
Wow.
in the 80s. So it was a very exciting time. And then, had the opportunity to fly the F-15, the F-16 as an aggressor, which is the bad guy, the adversary. That trains our combat pilots and what to expect from any adversary force. And then even got to go on an exchange tour with the U.S. Navy and fly the F-18 in flight test, in operational flight tests. So wow. I got to fly 3 of the 3 greatest jets of that era. Now today with the F-22 and F-35, I wish I was there, but for my era, those were the 3 greatest fighters, and I had the privilege to be able to do that. I do write in the book, it's A Sky Less Traveled, a Maverick Life of Leadership, Resilience, and the Pursuit of Purpose. So, I do write in there that literally right when I was starting as a fighter pilot, the first Top Gun movie came out and Maverick was there, and that just kind of resonated with the experience that I was having in my life. Although, a lot of the movie was, a lot of smoke and mirrors and not necessarily reflective of how we did things. But we even more so when the second movie came out towards the end of my career, or after my career was over, and I've been doing what I was doing in the aerospace world. It really resonated. In fact, it was one of the motivators for writing this book was, hey, not everybody has to be, a general or an admiral to be successful.
Right.
And you can do things that have lasting impact and without being the one that everybody knows about. And you can do it in a way that maybe, not being disrespectful or anything, but bucks the traditional norms and looks for different ways to solve problems. And so I think that's what it was like for me in my career. I made choices that I knew were going to take me out of the limelight, not necessarily get me promoted, but at the same time, give me opportunity to do things that nobody else got to do. And, I was maybe one of 4 or 5 pilots that got to fly the 3 airplanes that I flew. I got to see intelligence work, meet people from other countries that I never thought would be able to do. And for someone, that was pretty junior, had the ability to influence, decisions and even some world events that occurred. So, it's amazing to me. I felt like, I was very mature at that point, but I look back now and go, boy, I was a young man, and the responsibility and the trust that the Air Force gives, shouldn't be taken for granted. And I appreciate that opportunity.
Yeah, that's amazing. I want to, before I ask more questions, I do want to say thank you for your service. I know I've said it to you in person before when we met, and all my grandparents were in the military. So my great uncle Bud was the first to fire off against the Japanese in World War II. And, a lot of like my dad's mom and dad met in Vietnam, the Army and the nurse, the Army guy and the nurse, like it was one of those stories, So I just have the haircut, so I don't, that's it. I do service in other ways, I guess, but yeah, thank you for your service. And I know I try to think of like what are people gonna ask you that they're gonna, if I was just watching this, what would I want to know? And another quick side note, I guess we're gonna link your book below, so or above wherever this video is, there'll be a link to your book on Amazon. For those who want to check it out, they should read it. It's a great book. And what was it like when you first got in? I guess it was F-15 was the first jet. What was that feeling like when you first flew the first, F-15? Like, how was that? Yeah.
There's a lot of, it's a very powerful airplane. It's a very complex airplane, more so today than it was back then. I think it was powered by a 24K computer back in the early 80s compared to the incredible machine it is today. But I don't know. I just felt prepared. I never felt intimidated. I grew up with a culture of sports and competition. And to me, it was just, that was an extension of me. This airplane became a part of me, and I was going to go up onto a playing field, which is those skies in which we trained. And I was just going to execute my plan like I did when I was playing sports. And for me, that's kind of the mentality that I had and what I did. But, I think it's the second or third flight you get in the F-15, you do a max performance takeoff, and it is the world time to climb aircraft, still is, after 50 years. And, you light those burners, you roll out a runway, rotate into the vertical, and, you're able to look behind you and you just see the earth disappearing, as you're rocketing up to, 25, 30,000 feet. And the first time you do that, you realize, okay, this is going to be fun. And I always say, I feel like instead of getting paid, I should have been paying somebody for the opportunity to get to go do that every day. And it was just a great experience.
That's amazing. No, it's one thing you said, and I know you talk about this in the book too, but I think it's good to double click on here, is that you did all this preparation and you talk about in the book about leadership and and different things that you do to where by the time you get to the main show, or in this case, flying F-15, or F-16, like you've done so much preparation that it's an extension of you. It's second nature, and that applies. And I know, again, you talk about this in the book, but it's like that applies to so many things in life. That repetition, that commitment, that over and over again, preparing, and then by the time you actually do the thing, it's like, this is just another one of those sessions that I've done. And so it's not this like I imagine myself getting into an F-15, I would be freaking out. I don't think I'd make it off the tarmac, I would just be like, and I'd swerve a little bit. And I feel like how many things in life people do or assume are that same way. They're so nervous. It feels so big. It feels so hard, whether it's building a business or, having a team, or it's other, physical things in life, whatever they are, that if you just do the same things like you talk about in the book, like you have that repetition, that you can start to build in that ability to feel like this is just an extension. This is just another thing that I do. Yeah.
Yeah, it's preparation, right?
Yeah.
And that preparation focused on a mission. I was surprised when I went from the military life to the commercial world. I thought, oh, these companies, big companies, Raytheons and Mitsubishis of the world that I worked for, others, and thought, oh, they must know how to do these things because they're big companies. Well, they have a lot of money and they can pour money at things and get things done. But I was surprised in a lot of ways that those things that we just took for granted in the military just weren't happening in the civilian world. And I did everything in my power for the groups that I had influence on to make sure we did those things. And it makes the hard become easy, not because it's easy now, but just because you're prepared. Part of it is to focus on your mission, right? This is what we're here for. This is the purpose, why we're driving for the things that we're doing. Having a vision for where the end state is, you clearly define what it is you're trying to become or what you're trying to be, and then you build yourself a team that has values centered around that mission and vision, and then it becomes easy because you become a part of a team that you don't want to let down, and that you hear that all the time from military people when you see it in movies and shows. You're serving your country, you're doing all that, but what you're really doing is you got the back of the guy that's next to you. And when you're flying, it's your wingman, it's your squadron, and you develop this meaning so that you have purpose. And that drives, we talk about that in the book about a purpose-driven life, is you need to rally around something like that. And so when you think of it that way, then you prepare yourself because you don't want to let those down that are counting on you. And the difficult then doesn't seem so difficult anymore because it's something that you confront and you just do over and over and over again. And you do it in a way that you have accountability for your actions because the trust, you don't want to lose the trust of those around you, and you need to have the respect of your organization. So all those things come together. So it's a lot of different pieces there that I just talked about, but it is, you develop this trust because of that repetition and because of that preparation. You rally around a mission and you're focused on that. And then all of a sudden, the difficult doesn't seem so difficult anymore.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's one of the things you said too about the core values is something that I think is an integral part. I know for us, like we have we call them the 6 C's, and there's certain things that community and different values that you want to build around. And so that way we can have a shared thing instead of having this big group of rules, like there's got to be rules, right. But at the same time, if you're like, do this, don't do this, sometimes I know a lot of people can fight against it or whatever else. But if you have shared values, right. It's like, does this fit into the thing we're trying to do? Does this add to the purpose and the mission? Does it fit into the value system? And if it doesn't, you can kind of, almost, select out the behaviors that you're not going to do or you want to do and choose the right things just based on that without having anyone have to tell you what to do or what not to do or follow this or don't do that. And I love that. It's so cool to me to see how much those lessons, especially in the military, because again, we have these ideas of the military. It's very strict. It's discipline, which I know it is as well. But it's like how much those can apply to the rest of life, and especially to business and to these different things. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about government is that, especially with the military, there is so much investment. There's so much growth, so much opportunity, so much technology, so many things. And I think people forget that that spills over into the rest of the world. That spills over into the rest of our country because those lessons that are learned over and over and over again are able to apply over to this company or this person or, and this butterfly effect that happens, just from your experience alone. Right. And so, I think it is a beautiful thing to see. Yeah.
Yeah, authoritarian, people that, military authoritarian, but anywhere you go, a leader or manager that's authoritarian, that may work for a short term. And sometimes you may have to be, but it's just for an instant. Because people that think they can just boss people around because of their authority, people don't follow you. They do the work because they are just obeying. They're not buying into it and they're not committed for the long term. And so leaders are there to serve the people that they're working with.
Yeah.
Is the thing that I always try to stress to people. And good leaders, don't count on themselves to get everything done. They look to their team and make sure their team understands what needs to get done and set them up for success. And then they create great teams. And my 3 C's are, as a leader, when I would set up my teams, were, I need people of character, and that needs to be first. And that's not found on a resume, and you're never going to find that on a resume. But through an interview and through watching people in the interaction, especially watching how do they treat people that mean nothing to them or can do nothing for them, and that tells you a lot about the character of someone and what they're going to be like with the rest of your team. But you can't have a team that's just full of good people, because if they're lousy at what they do, they're going to be lousy. So the second C is competence. They need to be good at what they do, and not necessarily right now good at something, but they have a history of showing they can learn, and they have a history of showing that they get better at what they do. That they have the ability to debrief and learn and apply that to become better in how they're doing things. So that competence is very important. But then again, there's teams that have good people that are very good at what they do, that they don't succeed because they're not committed. And that's the third C. You got to have commitment. You got to buy into what you're doing and want to have that success. And that's what a good leader does, is they set that up so that people clearly understand the end state, what the result is going to be, and people will commit to that, because everyone, face it, most people want to be something bigger than themselves. They want to be a part of something that has meaning, and that they can say, hey, look at, you always hear the MVP award. Oh, I'm the most valuable player. That's great. But what I really want to do is win the Super Bowl. I want to win the big event, because that team meaning, being a part of something bigger, is something that you can really get success from. So, those were the things that I really looked for, as a leader, or when I'm evaluating or helping coach young leaders. Those are the things that you need to set up. You need to set up that environment. You don't need to tell everybody what to do. You don't need to be bossy. You don't need to be authoritarian. You just set people up for success by creating an environment that makes them want to come to work every day, and they find some joy in that.
That's great. No, I love that. Yeah, I think more leaders that follow that act of service, like you're here to serve everyone, not manage them, like you want to inspire them. You want to create that environment. You want to help them succeed. And I think that's how you can attract people that are better than you, right? At whatever the specific thing is, and I think that's, otherwise people are not going to want to, be a part of that team and that mission and that purpose, if they feel like, you're trying to tell them what to do. And especially if they know more than you on how to do that thing, they're like, why would I listen to this person? That's great. So what are some of the other things too? I mean, I know in your book, there's a lot of things that, again, they spill over from not only just like the military experience, but your experience, what you've extracted. I do want to separate those two things, because it's not like everyone who goes through the Air Force comes out with these exact same things. There's a handful of them, but you've extracted these lessons and from your experience. And what are some of the other things that a business owner, whether it's a startup founder, or someone that wants to be in a leadership position, or small, medium-sized business, or a huge corporation, what are some of the things they can apply from that experience that you've had in the Air Force and some of the things that you mentioned in the book?
Well, I think one of the major topics I talk about is, a couple major topics, but the first one, you hear people talk about leaders and managers and act as if they are separate functions, and in a way they are, but at the same time they're very interrelated. And a lot of the books and the talks that you hear today is that, leadership, it's all about leadership. Well, the best leaders in the world at poorly managed organizations fail, because they could have all the vision and they can motivate people all they want, but if they don't have the management side, which is good processes, procedures, understanding and accountability for how things are going, you don't know how to make changes, and you don't know how to affect that change, and how to get better at things, and how to motivate people to do things. So leadership and management go hand in hand. And some people are very good leaders, but they don't manage very well. And they motivate like crazy, but then it's just a mess. And on the bottom line, they don't make money, or the organization fails at whatever it is they were trying to do. On the other hand, you get these managers, oh boy, they know every rule, they know every regulation, they can set up processes and be efficient and get all the efficiency out of things. But if they can't motivate people and build a strategy and a vision and get people to rally around it, then they're not going to be successful either. They'll muddle along, but so the two of them work together. And one of the quotes I think I have in the book is, when things are going right, you manage. And you keep things moving, you keep it flowing, you make things efficient, you keep people happy. But when things go wrong, you lead. Then that's when you got to break the norm. That's when you got to say, hey, let's evaluate what we're doing right now because it's not working. So let's change the way we're managing and the way we're doing things. And you need to lead that. There are two principles that are interrelated. And I learned that very early on. The military, the Air Force gave me it was a leadership factory. But at the same time, you get a very technical job. You're a fighter pilot. And you're learning the techniques of that. But at the same time, you have the ability every day to learn about leading and managing people and things. And so being able to understand and being good at something technical, but then at the same time understanding that there's leadership and management that overlays it, and finding your place in that is very important. And you don't need to be the boss to be a leader. You don't need, to be the greatest at what you do to lead. And so leadership happens all throughout the organization from top to bottom. Now, management, that's usually reserved for those positions that are responsible for the way things are supposed to be and establishing standards and processes so that people we can all operate together because we have one standard and how that happens. So that there's this interconnectedness in it. And so I encourage people, you don't have to be the manager to lead. You can lead within the framework that you have. And as people see that, they're going to give you increasing levels of responsibility in your career and within the organization. And whether that's in the Air Force or whether that's in a commercial or private business throughout. So, those are the biggest things. The other one is that, businesses, especially big businesses or big institutions like the Air Force, they have this prescribed path for success. They have this, you can get promoted up and everybody's goal should be a 4-star general someday, or everybody should be the CEO, of the company. Well, that ain't going to happen, right? So there's just one of those usually, or a handful. And so you can be successful without having to follow that path.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that path if you want to do it, but there's all sorts of other detours along the way that you can find a way to make a difference, and that you can find personal joy in what you do. And that to me is more important than what rank or what position or title that you end up with. Is, did you make an impact in the work that you did? Did that impact when you left, did it continue because it was a lasting impact? That's true legacy to me, is that even if people don't know it came from you, did it continue to work after you left?
Yeah.
And if it is, then that's impact, that's legacy that you left behind, and you can be proud of that when that happens. It's funny, you see a lot of people really good at stuff, but they think, I'm going to keep my job if I'm the only one who can do this. And I'm going to hoard this information.
It's
I'm
so
going to
weird.
Be the one
it's so true.
It's so weird. But then what happens? They leave and everything crumbles because nobody knows how to do what they do. That's not impact, and that's not helping yourself or an organization in the end, because when you leave and it all falls apart, do you really feel good? Look, it was because of me. That exactly. That short-sightedness, it just doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help anybody grow. It doesn't help find your replacement as you leave, to bring somebody up along with you so that they can, find that leadership and that joy in what they do throughout. So I think that's very important. And another point on this topic is, you don't get to make other people's. Colin Powell had a quote, and I use it in the book, but you don't get to make other people's decisions, so why do you let other people make yours? Ooh. So own your decisions, own your decisions. And don't be afraid to do things that are right for you. There's other influences. Yeah, you should listen to your spouse or your family or your parents or your coworkers, your friends, or those people that influence you. But in the end, the decision is yours, and only you truly know what's going to bring out the best person in you,
Mm.
and what's going to bring you joy in what you do. So don't let people tell you which path to take. Listen to their advice, but in the end, find the path that makes a difference for you, and the path that makes you happy, that brings you lasting joy. Not just temporary, ecstasy or whatever. What really motivates you to want to come to work every day, and it doesn't have to be someone else's plan. It's yours. And those are probably the biggest things that I got out of that transition from the military to civilian and commercial life.
Yeah, that was amazing. There's so many good nuggets in there. I was doing my best not to interrupt because I'm like, these are all great.
Please
These are all
do.
great. I'm a talker. As I know you know, so I do my best to not to not interrupt. But those were all great. I think one of the things too. I mean, there's a lot you said, but one of the things you mentioned about like the hoarding, the way they do things. I think that's so important because I think. And not to sound woo-woo or spiritual, but I think it's just I don't know what any other words necessarily used for it, but this scarcity kind of mindset versus an abundant mindset. And again, it doesn't have to be even in a spiritual sense for those who are don't like those words, but it's thinking that there's a limited amount of resources or opportunities or, that kind of fear-based, I guess is a way to say it, mentality. Right. And I love the way you framed it because there's so many people that are wanting to grow and wanting to expand. And again, it could be a founder, it could be someone with a startup, could be a small business owner, it could be someone in the corporate ladder that's, maybe they're a VP, but they want to become the CEO one day or whatever it is. And to keep that kind of mentality, it's contracting you and it's limiting you. And it's not you aren't going to expand in your impact and in your work and in what you're giving to the world and your gifts if you're in that space of I need to limit everything and keep it this trade secret. Now, obviously, there's people in the CIA that need to keep things secret. Don't tell anyone your systems. It's like that part's fine. But there's very few of those that that the roles make sense. And so I think it's great. I know for myself, I was just thinking about because selfishly, I'm always like, okay, taking the nuggets, asking questions of the answers that I want to, hear from someone like you, these amazing people that have this great experience and not just trying to build you up. It's literally true. I'm like, how can I get this gold and distill this gold and hear this info and,
Right.
And trying to think of how I can apply it. And I know for myself, like some of the things you mentioned, like I'm not a great manager, right? Like I'm not a great manager and I know that about myself. I'm a visionary. I'm a CEO. I can do that aspect of get people motivated. I can lead and inspire, but that's why I have the other Corey, right? Master Corey, he is very operational. He's very COO. He's very systems. I'll say some random thing and he'll put it into a workflow. It's like, so we have this good balance because it's one or the other. Without the other, it just doesn't quite work. And, And I think that's one of the things people need to understand is that like I know for me it's like I've had success, feel successful in the way that I want to be successful, but I'm okay with admitting what I'm not good at. And I think that is one of the things that you were kind of mentioning there is that like understanding what your level of success is, number one, what your level of fulfillment is, right? Like just not monetary success or status, also fulfillment, but knowing what those strengths are that you have, what ones you can cultivate, right? Just like team members, maybe people can evolve, right? People can find more competence or, they can be able to learn and apply because they're dedicated and they're committed to finding a solution. But knowing that about yourself too, like I have tried my best to do systems and be a manager and do all the things that it's just not me. And I know that about myself. And so even when I've done consulting as like a fractional CMO or, stepped into a company to help someone grow or scale or do an exit, here's what I'm good at and I know it, but I need this support around me. Otherwise I'm going to talk and it's going to feel like hot air because there's no one to actually do the execution,
Right.
And that's the thing. And you got to know that because it's like, I know when 10 years ago, I used to do it all myself. I was a one-man bandstand. I could do the execution and do the things, but I couldn't grow. It was me and, 5 random people that I worked with on the internet that I would try to have help me with stuff. I just kept this almost lifestyle business, because I couldn't actually develop a team. I couldn't, it was like, what's that bigger picture? I can share that, but most people can't, even if I explain it, can't see it or how to get there and what the systems are to get there. So it takes a lot to have that self-reflection and be comfortable with knowing this is what you're good at, this is what you're not good at. Find people around you that can complement that, develop the skills that you're able to develop, and the things that you just are just not going to work for you. Bring on people, either hire it or partner or whatever else. And I think it's just super important for people to know that. Yeah.
And I was going to say, you have to create an environment as the leader where you bring your best self to work.
Mm-hmm.
And if you aren't bringing your best self to work, it's time to reevaluate. Either A, I haven't set the conditions here to make it work, or B, I need to find something new to do. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that either. Yeah. And some people are, change is just, they become petrified, and there's nothing wrong with change. I mean, change happens. You can't control it. You can't make it not happen. Change is going to happen in your life, whether you're ready for it or not. So you just have to have the means to be able to adapt to it. And find within that change how you bring your best self to work. Because if you bring your best self to work, it's this effect on everybody else that all of a sudden they become motivated to do that. And that's where within that organization, we had 4 principles that, I always tried to build into my group, and trust was the first one. And that's leadership is all about trust. You hear it over and over again, but what is trust really? And I defined it, from a sports and fighter pilot analogy, is that you never let a teammate down. You never let a teammate fail. And what does that mean? I never let a teammate down because I do my job. I'm there. I'm busting it out. But at the same time, is the realization that we're not always at our best every day. Yeah. And knowing that someone's got your back. I have my wingman. I got my teammate. I'm not going to let them fail. If they need someone to come help, then I'm going to step in and help them when they need it. Now, if it's over and over again, maybe there's a problem that needs to be addressed. But sometimes people need that help, and you shouldn't be afraid to ask for it. And that's trust within an organization to me. And you can't have that kind of trust if you don't respect each other. And so, and building that respect is very critical. And I don't think you do that by sitting in cubicles or offices all day long without ever looking at each other. And you just, you're looking into your computer or reading your stack of papers. You need to have the interactions and create them such that people learn to understand that everyone has a different perspective, that they have the right to that perspective, and that those perspectives built together, come up usually with the best solutions. And so that respect is important. And then the other one's accountability, right? So none of it works if in the end someone can't say, that was my responsibility, I'm accountable for it not working, or hey, that's mine, I'm going to make it work. And when it doesn't, that there's not a bunch of fingers pointing, in different directions at who was responsible. Ultimately, it's that leader, it's that person that's up on the top that is responsible for it. And that accountability is important. And as a leader, you show that by, when something didn't quite work out right, or you call it a failure. I'd always tell my managers or leaders under me that before you point the finger at somebody, or you should first evaluate what you did. Did you clearly define the desired end state, what the result was supposed to be, so they understood what success looked like? Did you give them the resources to do the job? Did you ask them to do something in a week that you knew was going to take 4 weeks? You set them up to fail. You didn't give them the money to do it, and it was impossible to make it happen. You didn't give them the tools they needed to make it work. That's on you as a leader, not on that individual or that team. And then the final one is were they really qualified to do it? Now, sometimes you got to push a team a little further, to make them realize that they can do more. But you have to judge that. You got to make sure that they're trained, that they have the experience, that they have whatever it is they're going to need, to make that success. And if you didn't do that, that's not anybody else's fault than you. And you need to be accountable. And if you are accountable that way, it's amazing how that just kind of infuses across the team.
That's so true.
And then the last one for me is none of that works unless you actively listen. And there's a big difference between, my wife always says, yeah, you hear me, but you don't listen. But I try. Actively listening means that you're not ready to already have your answer. You actually step back and you let somebody speak. You hear what they have to say. And to me, that means finding, where where do we have commonalities? Where is it? Because where you have commonalities are things you already agree upon, and you can build on that.
Yeah.
What most people want to do is hear where they have differences, and then all that causes is chaos and argument throughout. So that active listening, it's something that I still work on every day, but I think it's something that we can all learn from, to really hear someone out. Now, as a leader, you can't always do what somebody wants to do, but if they know you truly heard them out, you considered it, and you can explain why you had to make a different decision, then that goes a long way in that trust and the respect and accountability that you're trying to create. So that was the 4 kind of guiding principles that I always used with my team.
Those are so powerful. Yeah, those are so. Speaking of active listening, I was trying not to interrupt the whole time. So I'm like, yes, yeah, you get excited, you want to add to the things. I'm like, this is so great. No, it's so great. I think it's one of the things I think, and this talks about those principles, but also what we talked about before this too, is that I think a lot of people too, when it comes to starting a business or growing a business, a lot of times founders, and myself as an example, the founder then becomes the CEO. Doesn't always mean the founder should be the CEO. My friend was talking about this the other day. He's like, most founders aren't necessarily good at being a CEO, right? You have to understand those are 2 different roles, right? And so there are some crossovers with the vision and direction, but they're 2 different roles, and knowing those roles is so important. And I one of the things that you were mentioning too is that accountability. I think one of the things, and again, I'm not trying to talk about my team or myself the whole time, but I like relating it to it, and it's like it's so great to hear, and I'm seeing, okay, I can improve that, I can do this, and I tried to download, I call it downloading my brain into our back office, right? Like we have a team portal and a client portal, and I'm like, how can I download my brain? Because I can share all the things over and over again, but it's like I might think I'm being clear, but people are like, I don't know what you said. You did it fast and you used some other words, and it might have sounded good, but I don't know what you meant. And what are the next steps? What actions do I need to take? What exactly do I need to do? And this happened the other day. One of our team members watched one of the trainings about, here's the next steps for this specific thing. And I said, well, what is it? Because they were like, didn't really make any sense. And I said, if you had to guess what you think the next step would be based on the video. And she goes, to be honest, I have no idea. Like, you went over a lot of stuff, but I have no idea. What am I supposed to do? This, and then this, and then this. There was no clear outline direction. And I'm like, okay, there we go. Thank you. Now let me remake a new one. And actually, because that's on me, right? I think I'm saying all these great things and explaining it. And they're like, it all sounds great, but there's no clear direction in this specific task for what I'm supposed to do. And they want to be responsible. They want to take care of it. They want to show up for the client and make sure they're sharing the things. And they're like, I don't know what to do. So it's like, okay, let me
actionable feedback. That was actionable feedback.
That's it. And it's like, and that's what I look for. Cause it's like, I know that I'm not, if they don't understand it, it doesn't matter how much I think it made sense. It didn't make any sense. It doesn't work. Yeah. It's based on how they receive it, and if it's going to actually make sense for the next steps. And so I have to remake it, And I think those things are so important. And I think it's so good to help people understand, no matter. And this isn't just if you're a startup founder or you're a CEO or whatever. It could be any level of being in the team. These are all such important concepts, I think, to understanding values and systems and just things to be able to live by in a business, to actually have it grow. And I'll say this real quick, is that I think one of the beautiful things, when I think of the military, one of the most beautiful things that I think, and again, I haven't been in the military just because I have the haircut. I haven't actually been in the military, but I think about that camaraderie, and having someone or more than one person have your back. And I imagine you're going into battle, you're going into war. It could be one of the huge wars of history, or battles of history, or it could be a smaller thing. But you have these people, and you have to rely on them for your life. And that is just, you don't have room for, being incompetent or questioning or trying to hoard the process or, and it's such a clear cut line of this is how you have to show up. And if people can bring that to even whatever level into their lives, into their business, into their teams, I think it's just such a huge, huge impact. So, yeah.
Yeah, it is. And, the thing about that is that it's not contrived, and it is purposefully built. And that's what I think a lot of organization, companies, or businesses can do is they can do things to help build that kind of camaraderie and that common purpose throughout. In the book, I write a number of, the fun parts of being a fighter pilot. I mean, we have every squadron had a squadron bar, and it wasn't a bar just to go drinking in. There was a purpose there, and every Friday night there was a meeting at the end of the week, and everybody got together. And it's a tradition from World War I where they called it roll call, because back then they didn't know who actually made it back from the flight. Wow. They had to stand there and line up to figure out who lived, because so many of them didn't make it. And so we accounted for everybody every night, even those on vacation. There was a thing, we do a roll call. And then, there would be, the structure about the history of the squadron so that you could learn common purpose. You would do, some fun storytelling about things that were messed up during the week. They called it the 10% rule. Only 10% had to be true, but otherwise you could embellish on it. But it was a way for people to call people out in a way that it was done in a good-natured way that then said, okay, yeah, we can trust each other. We can talk about things that could be a little, uneasy, but we can do that in an environment where we have, this emotional security, where we know that we're safe, this emotional safety. And we created that environment, and pretty soon you build that organization. And again, how can you do that? You can do that too in businesses. You can do that in other things. You don't have these mandatory fun meetings or mandatory fun thing that we all got to go out. But you build a routine. And even as a leader, if it's nothing more than going around office to office every day, separate from the formal meetings, and just talking to everybody. I learned more about what was going right and what was going wrong in informal, just going to talk. I'd spend an hour every day just to stop by, so everybody knew I was there and I cared about them. But I would learn all sorts of, oh, really, that's happening. Didn't know that, because it wouldn't come out in a normal formal meeting. Plus, if they wanted to, we'd talk about their family and what was going on in their life, so they saw that I cared about them, more than just you're an employee here and we're trying to pull everything we can out of you. You got to give everything to us. What can you give back, to make your life better too, and give you that joy that you're looking for. And so when you do have to make a tough decision, they know that it isn't personal, that you weren't doing it, against them. It was, okay, these were the reasons why. And boy, that leader or that manager truly cares about me, because I know that, because we've had those conversations. We've shared, that kind of, the personal moment. So there's nothing wrong with that. And a lot of people think, oh no, work's work, and you got to, well, I think teams are teams, and people want to find that purpose, and they want to be something, part of something bigger than they are, and work can give that to them.
Yeah, no, I love that. Thank you for saying that too, because I sometimes I feel like it's like a lost concept. It feels like it's a new concept, but it also feels like people are trying not, or it doesn't feel like it's accepted as much, that you're still human when you go to work. You don't turn into a robot when you punch in, like you clock in. It's like you're still a human. And I don't know what the exact percentage is, but it's something like 60 or 65% of our time is spent, like a 40-hour work week means 65% of our time is spent with the people we work with. So if you're spending more time with those people than you are with your own family, put in the effort, connect on a human level and care. I mean, it's a crazy concept to care about people, but care, and you'll be amazed at what people will actually accomplish if you actually care a little bit. And I loved what you said too, is that when you just caring about them on a human level beyond work and their family or whatever else, that when you have to make those tough calls, that when there's something that you have to call them out on, or something you have to correct, or something you need to improve or whatever else, they're not going to take it personal, like you don't like them, because they're go, actually no, he just did all that, he just did whatever. Oh, okay, this is an okay thing. It's not an attack. It's not a whatever. And that, I think, just breeds such a healthier environment for people to want to work. And again, coming back to we talked about in the beginning, be dedicated to the mission, want to follow the actual core values, want to follow the process and the principles, and want to show up in a better way because they care and they know you care. So, I love that. Yeah, I guess,
you just like me, we pack a lot into short summaries there, but but there are good points there throughout. I was going to elaborate a little bit on there about Boy, now I forgot because I got off on my track. So we'll drop that topic. Go on to the
Yeah,
next.
no worries, no worries. Yeah, no,
It'll come back.
it will, it will, it will. And so I want to, obviously you have the book. Congratulations again on it being a bestseller, international bestseller actually too. I noticed when I looked at some of the rankings and stuff, is international bestseller. So it went ranked in I think Japan and I think Canada. I think it was in Spain, like a few other countries too. So I was like, yeah, that's amazing. But what is, so, for anyone watching who obviously buy the book, the link's below, definitely check it out. Follow you on socials, and I'll ask you about your socials in a bit as well. But before that, if someone were watching this and they were like, hey, I would love to, I want to work closely with him. I would love to find a way to work closer with him. What are some of the ways that people can work with you? Whether it's hiring you to come speak somewhere, hiring you as a consultant or a coach, is there other ways people can work with you on a deeper level?
Yeah, I have now formed a consulting company. It's called Wild Sky with a Y, so WYLDSKY. So Wild Sky Consulting, aerospace and management consulting. We have a website, wildsky-consulting.com. In it lists the services that I can provide: long-term consulting, short-term consulting, advisory boards, or coaching and mentoring. And now going out into doing with the book some keynote speaking. So I'm available on all those. The website gives a way to contact me. And certainly the book kind of explains what I'm all about and what I believe in, my experiences. I guess what I was going to bring up earlier is the book for me. I love everybody stories, and that's why it was always so easy, and it is easy for me to talk to people because I'm genuinely interested in their lives, because I think it's fascinating. We all live on the same planet, but our experiences are so different, and how we got to where we are, even though it could be the same place, the way we got there was so different. And I love those stories, and I wish everybody could write a book, or somehow we could capture everybody's story so that you could go back and research even within your own family. You often don't know what your great grandparents or great parents, it'd be great to know that. I wrote this book because I have 6 and 4-year-old boys. I'm an older father, and I want them to know my story, who their dad was, before they were born, for all those years, and the things that I was able to do. So, that's, if everyone kind of takes that attitude, their story is worth something, and it's worth sharing. And I wish people would do that. So I offer my story in the book, and if it's on Amazon, A Sky Less Traveled, Maverick Life of Leadership, Resilience, and the Pursuit of Purpose. And I would love for people to read it and then provide me feedback. I'd be happy to hear what you have to say, what you liked, didn't like about it. And I think that goes a long way in sharing our experiences and making us more interconnected.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, go out there, get the book, and only 5-star reviews. I don't care what he says. Only 5 stars. That's it. Nothing else but 5 stars. I wish everyone could write their story too. I've been a big proponent of that. Obviously, at the publishing company, it's like that's one of the things.
Right.
You meet these incredible people like yourself and others that have just made these amazing impacts on the world in small ways and big ways. And like you mentioned in the beginning, there's some things that have changed the direction of the planet. It's like, it might seem like a blip, or it was today, or whatever else for someone like yourself, but it's changed history. And so there's these amazing people out there that, people don't know. People, they're not this movie star or this Instagram influencer person, and it's like, but they're making the decisions that are changing the world. And besides, obviously, yes, those stories I think need to get heard. But there's also, like you said, there's people in every generation. Like I try to record my mom's conversations and get her to tell stories about that, and and grandparents, and just trying to find a way to connect, because I think there's things that weave us together, and stories are such an ancient part of our history as humans, that connect us together. And so I love that. And so everyone out there, go get the book, Sky Less Traveled, get it on Amazon. Again, you probably find a link somewhere in the comments here, or in the description, wherever this video is on YouTube or Instagram or LinkedIn or wherever it is you're finding the video. Grab the link to the book. And then to follow you. So I want to make sure, again, they can go to your website, wild with a y -sky.com. Is that correct?
wildsky-consulting.com.
wildsky-consulting.com. There we go. That's why I asked. So I'll make sure that's linked as well. wildsky-consulting.com. And then for social media, at LinkedIn, Instagram, is there any, Facebook, is there anywhere specific, or all platforms? Feel free to share how they can follow you.
I'm on LinkedIn, Kyle Skalisky on LinkedIn, and then also on Facebook. And so I've been doing some posts about the book and these recordings that we're doing for the podcast. It's been exciting for me, and enjoy sharing that story. And I really enjoy the feedback that I've been getting from the people that it resonates with.
So good to hear. So good to hear. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm looking forward to having even more of these conversations with you, and hopefully seeing you again in person. It was amazing to see you in person in Vegas, and I hope to see you again soon, and sometime in the early next year, so we can do some more events and stuff too. So thank you so much again, best-selling author, and incredible 23 years experience in the Air Force. I appreciate you, and thank you again for your service.
Corey, thank you for having me. And I look forward to continuing to have the conversation with you, wherever that may be.